Hey guys, Angus from Spotted Hog Airsoft here with another Airsoft video review for you guys today. Now today we're going to be taking a look at another Airsoft gun, that one currently in my hands. This is the Apex M4 RIS Carbine Mod 8 Airsoft AEG. Now this is made by a new company called 6mm Gunworks. There's a link down below in the description to their website. And from what I'm told, this is the prototype model. These aren't exactly available for release yet, and they're planning to have the final versions in by the end of October, beginning of November. So you guys are basically getting a sneak peek of a new product that's soon to hit the Airsoft market. Now when they offered to send me this thing out, they told me it would be an AEG that rivaled KWA right down to the wire. Does it? Well, let's hop directly into this video and find out. Alright, now hopping directly into the review, let's go ahead and start off with what we always talk about, and that would be this gun's external and internal construction. Now as far as externals go, it's a pretty easy segment for me, considering this gun is almost entirely constructed out of a solid metal. There are only a couple plastic or polymer pieces on here, and those include the included foregrip. This is constructed out of that plastic component, as well as your textured grip and the actual stock itself. The buffer tube is constructed of metal, as well as your upper and lower receivers, your whole RIS handguard, your sling mount, your outer barrel, your flash hider, your iron sights, even your magazine. So basically everything on this AEG is constructed of that solid metal, with the exception of those three pieces. Of course they mix in and feel rather solid. It's not like they're cheap or crappy or anything like that. They're made of a solid polymer, and the texture pieces are quite nice. The paint also looks rather nice finish on there. The one thing I've never been crazy about when it comes to this stuff is the gray mag with the black AEG. Just not exactly a pleasing color combination, at least to me personally, but otherwise externally the gun looks rather solid. Talking about a few other external tidbits very quickly, located on both sides of the AEG's receiver, you do have some beautifully laser engraved markings on each side. Here we have what I'm assuming is the Apex logo, as well as Apex Carbine 6mm and a serial number. You do have a rather disappointing Made in Hong Kong located right back, and on the opposite side we have a reflected Hong Kong marking, as well as the Apex Airsoft right here, which looks rather nice. Again, these are laser engraved, they're there to stay, and they look absolutely beautiful on the sides of the gun. Now, as far as internals go, they're not necessarily my forte. I'm not in no way an Airsoft internal expert. However, what I've been told from 6mm Gunworks is this AEG has a full metal gearbox that is LiPo ready, so you can go ahead and run those 11.1 volt batteries in here. It's got 9mm ball bearings, and it also has a Type bore barrel installed stock. So internals, they appear pretty solid, and you'll see them tested out a little later on in the video. And externals, certainly the gun feels solid and is built well. Now hopping directly into this M4's features, let's go ahead and cover its adjustable crane stock. Now obviously the stock is adjustable like I just stated, and currently it's at its shortest position. If you wanted to adjust it for comfort, you'd simply push in this plastic paddle piece here, and then you could extend it out potentially to its longest position shown here, and a couple different positions in between. One thing to note about this crane stock is I noticed this paddle piece is rather loose and a little bit flimsy, tends to get stuck up top, and also the stock is a little bit rough to move. You really do have to give it some force to get it to jerk back a little bit, and I don't necessarily like that, seeing as how if I was in a game, strict situation, needed to shorten the size of my gun, it might be a little bit difficult because you do have to give it a little extra force than you have with some of the other AEGs out there. Also, I noticed if you're not careful, you can easily just pull the stock straight off of the buffer tube, so just be careful with that. You don't necessarily want to have that flying off in-game as you go ahead and try to adjust it. Otherwise, though, it's great that the stock's adjustable for comfort or situation variance. It's good to have that adjustable ability on there. As far as other features of the crane stock go, a rather nicely textured butt pad that'll aid in gripping onto the shoulder when you're actually firing the AEG. Now, as far as crane stocks go, traditionally this is where your battery would be held, and in this case, that is true. In order to access your battery compartment, you simply want to squeeze in on the sides of the butt pad, and when you do that, it will pop off to reveal your battery compartment, typical of any other crane stock. It does have a small type connector, and you can either store a slender LiPo in here or a nunchuck battery, which is the typical type that these crane stocks do use. You're a little bit limited as far as battery options go, seeing as how you're stuck with the nunchuck or that very slender battery, but you know, it gets the job done. So overall, typical crane stock battery space, nothing necessarily to complain about there. However, like I always warn, don't slam the battery into the crane stock too hard, because if you do, you're liable to pop these end pieces out, which usually are just glued or carefully placed in there, and a little bit too much force can send them flying out. It's not like it's going to screw up your whole battery system, but it might look ugly with part of the battery sticking out that portion of the stock. Just be careful with those. Now, as far as the Mod 8's fire selector switch goes, it's just your typical M4 dial style selector with the standard 3 settings, such as safe, semi, and full auto. Also, these settings are nicely laser engraved into the side of the AEG here, so you can tell in case you somehow don't yet know those settings. The selector switch is very easy to move. It does require a little bit of force too, so it's not like it's slipping in between settings. Overall, it's a good quality, crisp, easy to use selector switch. While we're talking about fire selector switch and fire modes, I might as well show you this gun's electric blowback function. Keep a close eye there on where your hop-up is. Semi-auto and full auto. Obviously, there's no kick felt from this electric blowback. It's just a cool, neat little function. Now, as far as the AEG's magazine goes, obviously right now it's located inside the gun, inside the magazine well. When it's in the well, there's a little bit of wobble, but really nothing significant and huge to worry about. In order to eject the magazine, you'd go ahead and push the standard M4 style release located on the right side of the gun, and at that point the mag will just drop out, so be prepared to catch it. Now, the included magazine is your standard M4 high-capacity 300-round magazine. This works just like any other M4 high-cap. You'd simply load it up through the trap door at the top. The BBs would feed through this hole, and also you'd simply wind the gear at the bottom in order to keep the flow of BBs going. Overall, it's just a basic high-cap. Works like any other. Just like as far as feeding issues goes with these things, with that higher rate of fire, you do have to keep winding quite a bit in order to keep them flowing as well as possible. Something to note about the magazine, it is already starting to show a little bit of wear, as you can see here, from being pulled at the magazine well only a couple of times. Just something to point out. Now, as far as the iron sights go on the Apex Mod 8, honestly, they're pretty accurate to the gun and really nothing necessarily to complain about. Obviously, you get two of them, a front and a rear, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at each of them. Now, the rear sight is a flip-up sight. When flipped down, this is obviously what it looks like. If you were to flip it up, this is obviously what it would look like. It's a pretty simple little pinhole style sight, obviously flipped down as you just saw, and it is adjustable for both windage and elevation. Simply turn here and turn this dial on the side in order if you wanted to adjust it for either of those settings. What's also nice about this rear sight is that they do have engraved, not necessarily painted in so they're not very bright, the different settings for however many distances you might be aiming, which is pretty cool that they did that on there. Nice paying attention to detail on their part. The front sight of the AEG isn't necessarily anything really special. It's just your standard old M4 style triangle sight with an adjustable sight post in the middle that's meant to be lined up with the rear sight so you can aim. Just your typical front sight you'd find on any other real M4. However, of course, with that big top rail there, you might as well go ahead and take advantage of it and slap a nice optic up on top. Not necessarily the iron sights obviously aren't bad, however, with that rail space, take advantage of the customization option, place a nice optic up there to really complete the look of the M4. You can do it, so why not? So obviously with that long top rail you get a little bit of customization option, but don't forget about the whole RIS handguard you have on the front half of the weapon here. You've got plenty of rail space there to add any real accessory that you wanted to, say a PEC box or a flashlight, a laser on the side rails. Obviously you do get the included foregrip down here. In case you're wondering, like I stated earlier, it's a plastic, very basic foregrip. Simply unscrew it at the bottom in order to loosen or tighten it to move it around. Just your basic foregrip. It's great they include it though, and that obviously taking up the bottom rail here, but you could also put a grenade launcher or something like that down there. I like the rail handguard on this gun because frankly I love customization, and in my option when you can change a gun around and make it yours with some custom effects, that is always a plus. The Mod 8's charging handle does have a function. When you pull it back, as you can see, the dust cover will flip down and reveal your hop-up unit, which we'll zoom in on now. Now, in order to adjust the Mod 8's one-piece hop-up unit, you go ahead and turn that rather large gear right there. This is large and easy to access. If you're out there in a winter game running larger gloves, it shouldn't be too much of a hassle in order to adjust this in that style of situation in the field. Overall, the hop-up's pretty effective. We're going to go ahead and put it to the test right now so you guys can see it in action. So let's go hop into the performance test. So that's right, it's that time of the video again. Let's go chrono the Apex M4 as well as take a few shots at the target to check out its performance. For the chronograph, we loaded up with 0.2 gram BBs and also installed an 11.1 volt LiPo battery to test out the true LiPo-ready internals of this AEG. This gun actually fired 385, 390 feet per second pretty consistently, and I think that's what the final version is supposed to shoot. Anyway, as far as rate of fire goes, we saw about 1,400 rounds per minute, and as you can see, that converts into about 23 or 24 rounds per second. So overall, the rate of fire was quite high on that LiPo, as we'd probably expect, and the feet per second on this apparently prototype model was exactly what I'd want to see for a field-style game. Now for the accuracy test portion of the performance test, I set up at about 135 feet away, loaded up my high capacity magazine with 0.25 gram BBs, and kept the old 11.1 volt LiPo battery in there. I also obviously adjusted the hop up for this shooting distance. As far as accuracy went, semi-auto was pretty accurate. However, I hit like 3 shots, then have to re-aim considering I had to constantly rewind the high cap in order to keep it feeding properly. Something to certainly note. Therefore, the semi-accuracy was a little sporadic, but overall the BBs managed to stay in the general area, and quite a few did hit the target. Also, taking a look at full auto, we saw that same issue where I had to constantly wind the high cap, but on full auto, this thing was certainly a BB hose. I could really just kind of run it around, no cloud effect. The BBs went in a straight line, zinged into the target, and it was overall great accuracy on full auto, especially with that many BBs coming down. Alright, and with those final shots being fired there, let's go ahead and hop into the final conclusion of this video review. Quick disclaimer, keep in mind guys, I'm an airsofter first and a reviewer second. This review's been concerned with how this AEG will handle out in the actual airsoft field, not how good it looks at a table. Now with that being said, let's keep this short and sweet. Overall, mainly, I didn't really have any issues with this gun. If I was taking this out into the airsoft game, I certainly would use it because there's nothing huge that would make me want to not use it. Things I didn't like the stock in general, seeing as how it was kind of a rough adjustment. Say I need to change it speedily in the field, I necessarily can't do that. The paddle piece kept getting stuck, which is a little annoying. And also, like I said, a couple times it just flew off on me, and who knows if I'm in a game, if it might whack the guy behind me. So, just something to point out there. Also, if you're running the 11.1 volt LiPo like I was, the high cap certainly isn't going to cut it. You'll definitely need to pick up some mid caps for the AEG. Seeing as how the high cap simply can't keep up with that high rate of fire. You noticed during the accuracy test that they had to keep re-aiming, missing a couple shots because I had to constantly wind, take my hand off of the grip. Talking about something else that's a little bit cheap, the grip is, like I expected, pretty cheap in general. You know, it feels nice at first, but it kind of starts to unwind and loosen as you're moving with the gun all day. So don't be surprised if this thing starts to loosen around and jiggle on you in a game. Otherwise, though, the rest of the AEG I necessarily didn't have a complaint about. I thought the electric blowback was, you know, not a necessary, but it was a cool function on there. Also, the externals were solidly built, the trademarks, beautiful, and the internals for those guys looking for a high-performance AEG out of the box with a stock Type bore barrel, quick change spring system, LiPo-ready internals, you certainly do get it with this Apex M4 Airsoft AEG. I don't have any KWAs to compare it to right now, but I got an airsoft game November 16th, and I'm looking forward to taking this thing out and seeing how it competes against some of my buddies running those AEGs out there. Otherwise, though, just taking a look at the review right now, I thought it was a solid gun with some minor but bigger complaints that I had about as far as stock, the high cap, the higher rate of fire goes. With that being said, though, guys, this has been Spotted Hog Airsoft's review of the Apex M4 RIS Carbine Mod 8 Airsoft AEG. It's a nice quality gun, just a couple little flukes that need to be worked out in my opinion. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe.